You know, people usually think the most extensive part of a marriage is the wedding. Like the venue, the catering, those flowers you look at exactly once.
Right, yeah. Or the open bar that makes your uncle aggressively friendly.
Exactly. But if you look at the reality, especially in places like Illinois, the most expensive part is very often the exit.
Yeah, and that exit is almost never just one simple conversation.
Right, it's not like the movies.
No, not at all. It's not some single tearful event where you just, sign a paper on the kitchen island and part ways amicably.
Right.
It is a incredibly long, highly structured, and frankly, financially brutal legal process.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Mm.
Because for today's deep dive, we have a whole stack of sources, legal and financial overviews, detailing the exact step-by-step timeline of an Illinois divorce.
Which is a pretty eye-opening material.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to intentionally strip away the emotional veil of a breakup. We're going to look strictly at the mechanics of the divorce machine.
Because that's the part nobody really prepares for.
Exactly. Think about it like a massive business deal. When you sign a marriage license, you are eagerly signing a binding contract. But almost nobody reads the termination clause.
No one wants to think about the termination clause when they're in love.
Right, so we want to give you, the listener, clear, informed consent about the legal trapdoor you're standing on, before you sign anything.
Well, to understand how that trapdoor opens, we actually have to look at the timeline before the legal paperwork even exists.
Wait, before the paperwork?
Yeah, because the emotional breakup and the legal breakup, they rarely happen on the same day. Often they're separated by months.
Oh, wow.
And this introduces a phenomenon that the sources call the head start.
Which honestly sounds inherently unfair. Like, if we're treating this like a corporate dissolution, a head start means one partner is liquidating the assets while the other is still happily ordering office supplies.
Structurally speaking, that is exactly the reality. Imagine a couple going through what one of them assumes is just a rough patch.
Right, like they're just arguing a lot?
Exactly. Let's say the husband, in this hypothetical, is reacting purely emotionally. He thinks they are still in the relationship, just struggling a bit.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the wife has quietly crossed over into legal strategy mode. She isn't just thinking about leaving, she is actively preparing the battlefield.
So she's basically living a completely parallel life while sitting at the same dinner table.
Exactly. She's opening new bank accounts in her own name, pulling her own credit reports.
Making quiet copies of the last 3 years of joint tax returns, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. She's also downloading retirement statements, mapping out the household cash flow, and even documenting daily parenting patterns.
Wow. Just gathering all the ammo.
And she might even be consulting with the top divorce attorneys in the area, essentially conflicting them out so her husband cannot hire them later.
Oh, man. I have to push back slightly here, though. Is that Head Start always a calculated, malicious move?
That's a great question.
Because it must be terrifying for you to realize your partner could be living this parallel, strategic life while you are still actively trying to fix the marriage. Or maybe you're just oblivious to the danger.
Right.
And there's this paradox there. Right? By quietly preparing for a divorce just in case, you might actually be creating the toxic environment that guarantees the marriage fails.
That paradox is very real, and it's vital. We don't moralize the motivation behind it. It isn't always malicious.
Okay.
Often, it's just pure self-preservation born out of a real fear of being left destitute. But here is the critical mechanism to understand that legal system doesn't care about the psychological motivation.
It just looks at the facts.
Right. The system mechanically rewards the prepared. The spouse who gathers the documents and controls the narrative early has a massive tactical advantage.
Because they basically set the stage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By the time the oblivious spouse realizes what's happening, the strategic spouse has already framed the initial narrative for the court.
And that quiet preparation is what eventually triggers the moment the invisible legal machine suddenly becomes very visible to everyone.
The formal notification.
Yeah. The sources describe the psychological warfare of being served, and it seems designed to be as jarring as possible. Like, why not just mail the paperwork and ask for a signature?
Well, mailing it doesn't establish an undeniable legal timeline. Personal service physically handing the papers to the respondent does two things.
What's the first one?
Mechanically, it establishes undeniable jurisdiction and starts a rigid 30-day countdown clock for a response.
Okay, so the clock is officially ticking. And the second thing?
Psychologically, it is designed to be a shock to the system. Think about the classic restaurant service moment.
Oh, I heard of this.
Yeah, you're out to lunch with coworkers, or maybe you're sitting at your desk, and a process server approaches you in a public setting, confirms your identity, and just hands you a stack of papers.
Taking this deeply intimate, private failure of your relationship and thrusting it into the fluorescent lighting of your office lobby.
It's humiliating.
It is, but it establishes a new, harsh reality. You are no longer just a struggling spouse. You are a respondent in a lawsuit. The meter is officially running.
And if you are suddenly hit with a lawsuit, your immediate instinct is going to be panic.
Absolutely.
But from the financial overviews we're looking at, your immediate problem isn't figuring out who gets the house in 2 years or how to divide the 401k. Your immediate problem is surviving the next 30 days.
Yes, the cash flow crush.
Because your monthly overhead abruptly doubles overnight, but your income stays exactly the same.
Exactly. Before a judge ever decides the final division of the marital estate, they have to put temporary orders in place.
And what do those do?
The legal mechanism here is designed to maintain what courts call the status quo. They want to keep the lights on, the mortgage paid, and the kids fed while the lawsuit plays out over the next year or two.
So these temporary orders dictate who physically stays in the house, who pays which specific bills, and the temporary support structures.
Okay, let's use that specific example from our research, the temporary support shock.
That's a really good one to look at.
So let's say spouse A earns $270,000 a year, and spouse B earns $80,000.
Okay.
Under temporary orders, the higher earner, spouse A, is often ordered to move out to de-escalate household tension. So let's look at how that actually plays out on a spreadsheet.
Right. So suddenly spouse A is paying for their own new rent or mortgage.
Which isn't cheap.
No. And because the court wants to maintain the status quo for the family, spouse A is still ordered to pay a significant portion of the marital household expenses.
Plus, they're paying a massive new legal retainer.
Exactly. And because of the income disparity, the Illinois statutory formula kicks in.
Which means?
It means they are paying temporary maintenance and child support to spouse B on top of everything else.
The math is just brutal. One household's income pool is being violently stretched across two separate physical households, plus the addition of ongoing five-figure legal bills.
Yeah, it's a huge hit.
You're effectively operating at a massive monthly deficit. It's like your personal inflation rate just hit 200% in a single afternoon.
People imagine divorce as this grand, singular accounting of dividing what you have built over a decade.
Like a one-time split.
Right. But in real life, the very first thing the legal machine does is make your day-to-day existence exponentially more expensive. The marital pie is actively shrinking every single month you are in the system.
Which inevitably breeds immense resentment right out of the gate.
Yep.
You're bleeding cash, you're living in a sterile, overpriced apartment you don't really want to be in.
Oh, for sure.
And your lawyer is billing you $400 an hour to argue with your ex's lawyer about who is supposed to pay the $15 Netflix subscription.
It happens all the time.
And because that cash flow is crushed, your immediate reaction is going to be, I can't afford this, my ex needs to pay more,
Right.
or my ex is hiding money, they can afford to take less.
Exactly. Which triggers the next phase of the machine.
Here we go.
If you have to prove your ex can afford to pay more, or if you need to prove you legitimately cannot afford these temporary orders, you have to tear open their finances.
You have to conclusively prove what they own and what they owe.
Yes. This launches financial discovery.
The paper avalanche.
That's a good name for it.
And from what I'm reading, a lawyer isn't just looking for a hidden offshore account like in a spy movie, right?
Yeah.
They are looking for something called dissipation of marital assets.
That is the exact mechanism. Dissipation is a major driver of this phase.
Like, if I spent marital money on an affair, the lawyer's going to find that hotel charge and legally demand half of it back for the estate.
Yes. What's fascinating here is how granular the forensic examination gets in Illinois.
How granular are we talking?
Well, if you are a spouse who hasn't kept meticulous records, maybe you just trusted your partner to handle the finances, or maybe you aren't a spreadsheet person, you are in for a nightmare.
Oh boy.
You have to produce 3 full years of tax returns, 12 months of continuous statements across every bank account, every retirement account, credit cards, personal loans, property records, and business ledgers.
And it doesn't stop at the big stuff either. The sources highlight that attorneys will subpoena your Venmo, your Zelle, your PayPal trails.
Oh, absolutely.
They are legally demanding to know why you sent $40 to a friend 3 months ago.
They really are.
They want to see the little pizza emoji you attached to the payment to decipher if it was actually for dinner or if you were siphoning marital funds to a hidden account.
Because if trust has entirely broken down, discovery becomes a weaponized audit. Every single transaction is scrutinized.
And what if you just, delete the app?
Doesn't matter. Lawyers will legally compel the tech companies or the banks to hand over the data directly if you claim you lost your login or deleted it.
Wow.
And if you run a small business, they will want your expense reports, your client lists, your depreciation schedules.
The sheer volume of data is staggering. The emotional toll of this specific phase really stands out to me.
It's incredibly heavy.
Because you, the listener, might be deeply grieving the end of your family. You are mourning the future you thought you had. But the machine doesn't care about your grief.
No, it doesn't.
You are forced to become a full-time paralegal in your own collapse. You're spending your Friday nights digging through old digital archives for W-2s, paying an attorney an hourly rate for the privilege of handing it all over to be judged.
It is an audit of your entire life, conducted during your most vulnerable psychological state.
That's a brutal combination.
And the financial cost of this phase skyrockets if lawyers are fighting over incomplete disclosures. If someone drags their feet, the opposing counsel files a motion to compel.
Which means more money.
Exactly. More billable hours drafting the motion, more court appearances, and escalating hostility before you've even started dividing the assets.
And just when you think you've finally categorized every dollar and accounted for every Zelle transaction, you realize the money isn't kept in a separate box from the rest of your life.
Not at all.
Because parenting time acts as direct leverage in those financial calculations we just talked about, doesn't it?
Yep.
The audit bleeds directly into the kids.
It does. The children become the absolute center of the legal fight. We call this phase the calendar war.
Here's where it gets really interesting. A family's shared digital calendar, the one where you used to casually log soccer practice and who is picking up who from school, is suddenly transformed into a zero-sum legal treaty.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It turns everyday, normal parenting into a hostile negotiation.
Yeah.
You have people fiercely arguing over Wednesday overnights.
Or whether custody exchanges happen at a gas station halfway between their new houses or at the local police station.
Right. They fight over whose specific home address will dictate the school district logistics.
They fight over the right of first refusal.
Oh, I read about that. That means if you need a babysitter for 4 hours, you are legally required to offer that time to your ex first before calling your own mother.
Exactly. But to understand why this happens, we have to look at the underlying mechanics. Even people who promise each other at the beginning of the breakup that they are going to be reasonable become deeply positional.
Because they learn very quickly from their attorneys that the schedule is mathematically tied to the money.
Bingo. Under Illinois guidelines, parenting time directly impacts the child support formula. There are specific mathematical thresholds.
What kind of thresholds?
Well, if a parent crosses a certain number of overnights per year, specifically hitting 146 overnights, the law views that as shared parenting.
Okay, 146.
And at that exact threshold, the child support obligation of the higher earner drops significantly.
Why?
Because the legal assumption is they are directly bearing more of the child's living costs by having them in their physical home more often.
Okay, so I might be fighting for that Wednesday night because I genuinely want to wake up and make my kid pancakes on Thursday morning.
Right.
But my ex assumes I'm only fighting for that Wednesday night to hit my 146-day quota and lower my monthly payout.
Exactly. Trust is gone, so every request is viewed with financial suspicion. The legal system doesn't ask you who loves the kids more.
Because the system doesn't measure love.
No, it demands to see the schedule. It measures leverage. If you want to move out of state for a new job, that isn't just a career decision anymore. It's a removal petition that requires judicial approval.
And a massive modification of this hard-fought calendar treaty.
Exactly.
It fundamentally alters the DNA of how you interact with your own children. You are tracking time like a billable professional.
Yeah, you really are.
So you have the crushed cash flow, you have the invasive paper avalanche of the financial discovery, and you have these brutal calendar wars over the kids piling up.
It's a lot.
As a listener, looking at this mountain of conflict, you'd expect it to culminate in some dramatic, cinematic courtroom showdown where a judge slams a gavel and declares a winner and a loser.
But the reality of how these cases actually end is much quieter and in many ways much heavier.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The vast majority of divorces do not end in a trial. They settle. In fact, in Illinois, courts often mandate mediation before a judge will even allow a custody trial to proceed.
But from reading these legal breakdowns, a settlement doesn't mean everyone suddenly saw the light, sat around a mahogany table, shook hands, and thought the deal was entirely fair.
No, not at all. Settling in this context is very often a forced compromise. It happens because both people are utterly exhausted.
The mechanics of the machine simply grind you down.
Yes.
It's the math again, right?
Yeah.
If you are arguing over a $10,000 difference in a retirement account, but your lawyer charges $400 an hour,
And a trial will take 3 days of prep and 2 days in court.
you are going to spend $15,000 in attorney time just to fight over $10,000. It makes zero economic sense to keep fighting.
Exactly. Add to that the terror of uncertainty. Going to trial means putting your entire financial future and your access to your children in the hands of a stranger in a black robe who has maybe read your file for an hour.
Yeah, that's a huge gamble.
Most people simply cannot stomach that risk, so they settle. They choose the least bad option available to them just to make the machine stop.
They run out of money, stamina, or hope. They tap out. A judgment is drafted, signed by a judge, and the marriage is legally dissolved.
But here is the cruelest illusion of the entire process, trapped the idea that a signature equals freedom.
You mean the surprise aftershock?
Yes. Even after the final judgment papers are signed and stamped, the legal and financial echo continues.
Because if you have kids, those co-parenting conflicts don't just vanish.
Right. You're now just fighting within the rigid confines of a court-mandated decree. If your ex is 20 minutes late for a drop-off, it's no longer just an annoyance, it's a potential contempt of court violation.
Oh, wow. And financially, the dust doesn't just settle either. Monthly support payments are still drafted from your bank account.
Yep.
Your overall standard of housing has likely dropped significantly because that original single income pool is now permanently funding 2 separate lives.
And your retirement trajectory has been permanently altered, often cut right down the middle with a qualified domestic relations order.
So the compounding interest you were counting on for 30 years is halved.
Exactly. Rebuilding that wealth and that stability takes years, sometimes decades. The divorce might be finalized on paper, but you are living in its aftershock every single day.
It's like you've meticulously dismantled a house and now you just have to live in the rubble for a while, figuring out how to build 2 smaller, separate houses from the scraps.
That's a really good analogy. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the reality we need people to understand. Right.
Marriage is not just a romantic declaration. It is an entry into a highly regulated, legally binding framework. The goal of breaking down this timeline isn't to tell you not to get married or to make you cynical about love.
It's about true informed consent.
Exactly. You need to know exactly how the machine operates before you turn it on.
Which leaves me with a thought I really want you to mull over. If couples were legally required to study this entire exit process, the discovery, the temporary orders, the calendar wars, before they were allowed to sign a marriage license, how would it change the way they behaved during the marriage itself?
It would probably change a lot.
Right. If you knew that every financial move could one day be subpoenaed, would you treat the union with the transparent, meticulous record-keeping of a business partnership? And if you did, would that transparency actually prevent the secrets, the resentment, and those quiet head starts that cause the divorce machine to activate in the first place? It's a profound question. We treat the entry into marriage as a fairy tale, but perhaps treating it with the gravity of a corporate merger is the very thing that could save it.
Think about that the next time you hear someone complaining about the cost of a wedding venue. The entry fee is nothing compared to the exit toll. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we'll see you next time.
If this helped you understand what you're actually signing, there's more like this on the channel. And if you want the full picture, listen to the podcast on Spotify or Apple.